Welcome, my friends, to the wars in heaven, or should I say hell. The Blood God has invaded the domain of the Dark Prince, and the fierce rivalry between Skarbrand the Exiled One and Nakari, the Bane of Ulthuan, will come to a head in the shadow of dark gods. Agony and ecstasy, pleasure and pain, perfection and power. Khorne vs. Slaanesh in a wild 2v2 faction war with an absolutely crazy ending. So strap in, strap on, get it right and get it tight. It's a conflict eons in the making and two incredibly disparate styles of warfare. And this matchup just comes down to decision making and micro. I think it's easier to win with Khorne. You have more room to make mistakes, but the skill ceiling is higher with Slaanesh, and you can push them further than just about any other faction in this game, which is fitting for a race dedicated to the extremes of sensation and experience. The box. You opened it. We came. Everywhere. We have such sights to show you. Nakari, leading the Slaaneshi host with Willing Prey, the Wit Stealer's Sword, Lash of Slaanesh, Acquiescence, Phantasmagoria, and Slicing Shards, alongside his Mortis Train for routing units and Harvester of Souls Heal for when enemies are finished off nearby. He's accompanied by a Soul Grinder, the second best anti-large duelist in the roster, and an Exalted Seeker Chariot in the back, which tends to perform much better than the other Slaaneshi chariots, but there's still something wrong with their damage output. We'll probably talk about that in another video. I'm not really sure exactly what's going on, but probably worth some testing. It's definitely the best of the three, though. In the rear are the sensuous serpent strippers of Slaanesh, the Fiends, which reduce enemy melee stats with their soporific must contact effect. They are very good, and just so happen to be one of the coolest units in the roster as well. Extremely happy with how they turned out. They are freaking awesome. But this is a 2v2, and that means another full army for the Dark Prince, helmed by an Exalted Keeper of Secrets with the Lore of Shadow, Seductive Glory, Pendulum, and Burst Healing when enemy troops start to flee. It is leading a decadent host of Chaos Spawn, Marauders, Cultists, and Heartseekers, a bit less resilient but even more mobile than the army currently led by Nakari. But the invasion force has landed, and they brought with them the big guns to counter Slaanesh. Dual weapon Berserkers and Chaos Spawn provide the perfect combination of high weapon strength and raw damage output for slicing through hordes of low armor demons, and they're led by a Herald of Khorne without any mounts whatsoever. And that's a very smart play, because it allows the Blood Host to build wider while supporting everything better with Locus of Wrath and Revel in Slaughter. You bring greater demons for the raw killing power, you bring Heralds for cost efficiency, and to help your troops get better. So sniping him out on foot will prove very challenging, and it makes it a lot easier to create a balanced, powerful army, or at least as balanced as Khorne can possibly get. They'll be flanked by a horde of Fleshhounds, also an amazing choice for Slaanesh, and two Skull Cannons that can replenish ammo and regenerate when munching on enemies in melee. But the biggest dickus, the absolute unit leading the Brazen Host, is Skarbrand the Exiled One, who hard counters Slaanesh with his Rage Embodied active. When all those fast movers dive in, he forces them to rampage, consigning their souls to oblivion as they are forced to fight head-on, losing all of their cycle charge potential until the effect wears off. And generally speaking, Slaaneshi demons are all dead before those 35 seconds are up. So you have to be super careful when you get near Skarbrand, because he can spank you hard. Skull Cannons ringing the dinner bell for this one with a fiery salvo. They'll get this thing popping off. Not the most accurate artillery ever, but certainly more versatile than your standard run-of-the-mill artillery. And it's safe to say Khorne knows what they're doing here, because they're led by none other than Agony Duck, previously the head of Warhammer 2's balance team, and a competitive player off and on for like the last 10 years. So he knows how to deal with Slaanesh, and he knows how to build an army. We've got some more Agony, or previous Agony players on my team. Agony Achilles will be in the red, I am in the purple, and Zach B. Sane is leading the tan on the Khornate side. So some decent players in here. Let's see how things shake out. Now the interesting element about team battles is that whatever traits exemplify a race are amplified even further in 2v2s and 3v3s. Dwarfs can't get outflanked when they have a strong 2v2 partner, so their firepower is even more deadly. Khorne Deathballs get even more terrifying, and Slaanesh mobility can pick and choose where to fight and overload a flank out of nowhere. So the way I tend to see Slaanesh play this is by pretending to acquiesce to a fight on one side, maybe throw in a token unit or two to die, then rapidly shift everything to try and 2v1 one flank or the other. But it doesn't always work, and it gets even scarier when a bunch of Furies and Fleshhounds are stalking the field with 95 speed. So, Hellstriders moving up the center, setting up a Penumbral Pendulum from the Exalted Keeper of Secrets. That'll be nicely dodged by Duck, and the rest of the Cav Mass charging in and looking to get a little bit of engagement early, but they will not stick in that fight. You do not want to make it a grind fest with Khorne. You cannot sit there and trade blow for blow. Your units are simply too squishy for that. So, gotta make sure you utilize that cycle charging and outflank the opposition. If you don't, you're gonna be in trouble early. We got some sexy gazelle giraffe boob snake things charging into support alongside some marauder chaff. Just poking and prodding for now, forcing the Chaos Spawn to commit, then retreating to the safety of Nakari's battle lines. Nothing's really stuck in at the moment. Just looking for gaps to exploit here, which is what Achilles' army is exceptional for with all that light cav, and the Heartseekers especially. But the one problem he might face in the red, though, is that Monument of Slaanesh, protecting the rear and right flank of Duck's army in the black. Can't easily get in from behind with that obstacle in the way, and Chaos Spawn have plugged the small gap that does exist anyway. And there are Cultists of Khorne from Zach B. Sane summoning Bloodletters into the mix. So if he wants to get a true Hammer and Anvil off, he has to go all the way around that obstacle, and that might be problematic. Nice Pendulum doing some damage to the Khorne troops in the front lines. Nakari and the Soul Grinder moving in from the flank to engage some Fleshhounds of Khorne. As we move into slow motion here, the Exalted Keeper of Secrets is in the midst of everything. Locus of Wrath popped for that plus 40 melee attack and an AoE, and Seductive Glory from the Keeper, ready to debuff the enemies nearby. Now, there are really two ways for Slaanesh to win in a blob fight that's kind of developing at the moment. The first is with Slicing Shards, which Nakari does have this battle. The second is with Phantasmagoria to lower leadership by 16 in an AoE, cause some chain routing, get that Mortar Strain effect in, and then hopefully some flank and rear charges to get them running for the hills, and then you just run them straight off of the map. That might be difficult here. Khorne is defending their flanks and rear exceptionally well, and they have the terrain advantage at the moment. Nakari and the Soul Grinder first into the breach, dealing with the first ranks of Fleshhounds and Chaos Spawn, and the cycle charging from Achilles, and those Heartseekers moving right into the teeth of that Khorne defense. A little bit of crumbling on both sides, a little bit of routing as well, but for the moment, no one has taken tremendous amounts of damage except for maybe a few Khorne Berserkers. There are a few that have dropped low, but they are lawnmowers, especially to low armor Slaaneshi infantry. So the way you deal with that is you debuff them with Willing Prey, lower their attack and melee defense, and then Marauders will be able to trade relatively cost efficiently with them. Soul Grinder unleashing all kinds of Noise Marine specials in the midst of the Khorne infantry. And even though he is a bonus versus large specialist, he has some cycle charge potential himself. And remember, he also has that devastating flanker passive. So Nakari going to work with the Crab Claws, giving crabs to all the opposition. And Skarbrand, the Exiled one, breathing magma as Nakari drops Phantasmagoria on the Khorne left flank, styling on him with 360 no-scopes of perfection, and we'll see if the Soul Hunters out on the periphery can capitalize on that net and leadership debuff. Demons dancing in the dark. Fiends are right there to support and to take the plunge, but the timing might not work out here. Marauders are routing too fast, and Seekers alongside Hellstriders charging into the Fleshhounds, which will pretty much always trade upwards because of their huge stats and weapon strength at a cheap price. They are a counter to Slaanesh units in many ways, and Achilles is getting beaten to hell out on this side. Much of his light cav has already been run down, defeated by the Fleshhound and Fury combination, and the Exalted Keeper looking for a duel with Skarbrand, the Exiled one, but with a Bloodthirster coming in with the RKO from behind. That is a terrifying proposition, and Rage Embodied just popped. We'll check on that in a second. Another nice charge from the Fleshhounds of Khorne, but the Skull Cannon caught out Willing Prey and Acquiescence, taking its melee stats down to essentially 0, and Nakari will just bulldoze straight through that thing. Immediately 100 to 0, almost instantaneously, and the Skull Cannon will crumble out. But Rage Embodied has forced a large portion of Achilles' army to rampage, and now they're stuck in a melee grind with Skarbrand, the Exiled one, and a lot of elite shock troops. That is not where Slaanesh wants to be. They're getting punished heavily for that blob, and a very nice play from Duck and Zach B. Sane, comboing up and putting a whooping on the Dark Prince's forces out there. Skull Cannon exploding in a fiery conflagration. That's a good pick, and the isolated units out here are just food for Nakari and the extreme mobility of Slaanesh. Their leadership is dropping, and Nakari is beginning to drain their souls with his Mortis effect, while the Exalted Seeker Chariot charges in from behind and gets some beautiful hammer and anvils off. Question is, how much damage is she doing right now? The answer, I have absolutely no freaking idea. It looks like it should just absolutely slaughter everything. Sometimes it does okay, sometimes it doesn't. We'll check on that soon. Meanwhile, we've got a duel with the Exalted Keeper of Secrets and the Bloodthirster, while Skarbrand drops feet first into hell and slaughters an entire section of the Slaaneshi army. Furies even have the surround off now, and this is a nightmare situation for the Decadent host. They are being taken to Pound Town by the Blood God, Soulgrinder, and Nakari, the rest of his mobility, making their way over. But the Death Ball of Khorne is looking very powerful, and one last pendulum from the Keeper of Secrets. That was a decent one, but it might be her last play because Skarbrand is on the hunt and not far behind, and he's also really fast. One attack will put her into a crumbling state. Fiends and Nakari coming over to support their lover, but even with Ballet of Blows popped, she's gonna be gone in a couple of seconds. Acquiescence and Willing Prey, taking Skarbrand's stats down to hilariously bad territory. 0 melee defense, Nakari landing some big hits on the Exiled one, but the Exalted Keeper is gone. Crumble out now, and that is a big blow to the Slaaneshi army. Balance of power shifting in Khorne's favor, and there aren't a lot of anvils left for the Decadent host either. Most of it is just mobility, and that doesn't work so well when you're faced with a bunch of halberds and heavily armored foot troops who can blob up around their powerful single entities. The initial stages of this battle have not gone the way of the Dark Prince, but they still retain some of their most important troops. There are plenty of Fiends of Slaanesh still around, still plenty of mobility. The Soulgrinder and the Exalted Seeker are both relatively healthy, although if a Bloodthirster gets a couple more attacks in on that Soulgrinder, maybe won't be. But the lore of Slaanesh will pay huge dividends as we move into the middle and late stages if it is utilized well. Fascination, the tier 2 army ability for Slaanesh, dealing some direct damage to Khornate Berserkers in the rear, and now the blobs are beginning to form, and this is where Phantasmagoria can really leave its mark. So what this does is Slaanesh can look at how the engagement is going, and then if it starts getting a little bit hairy for them, they can disengage without the Fleshhounds, without Skarbrand being able to run in after them. Now this time, it's going to wear off before they decide to disengage, so they'll probably take a little bit more damage than they'd like, and the Soulgrinder has been shoved a little bit further into that fight than it would like to be. The Greater Demon showing why it is such a powerful anti-large combatant. But Soporific Musk and the Witsealer Sword from Nakari dealing well over 1k in weapon damage with the rear charge and the light cav support. That Bloodthirster is also being taken to Pound Town. But the Soulgrinder is gone now, just crumbled out. That's a big loss. Skarbrand trying to make everything rampage. Horn of Khorne also popped for the extra melee attack. Nakari able to disengage, and let's take a look at his damage value as a Slicing Shards opens up from the heavens. It does not get juicier than this. They don't even see it because of how many buffs are active for Khorne, and they just got deleted from the freaking game. Nakari with one of the sexiest Slicing Shards you will ever see, and immediately putting Slaanesh back into this fight after they were on the back foot. Damage value skyrocketing from 2,500 to 3,500. He got 100 kills in a single cast, and Khorne's army, they aren't looking so healthy anymore. But they still have a critical mass where if they stay together in that death ball, it will be difficult for Nakari to engage, and he lost a lot of his support in that fight too. Most of his light cav is gone. The Soulgrinder was destroyed. It's pretty much just the Fiends, the Exalted Seeker Chariot, and remnants, stragglers with slivers of HP left. Breath from Skarbrand, not going to end up doing a whole lot. That's better against infantry and better when he's a little bit closer. But Fiends of Slaanesh are definitely a unit you'd like to have in the late game because of that devastating flanker and because of that Soporific Musk. They'll be debuffing any troops they come into contact with, that allows N'Kari and these very squishy Slaaneshi troops to perhaps take a frontal engagement and survive at least long enough for that Mortis Drain and heal for N'Kari to start kicking in. And that's what he wants to do right now. He wants to run down all these stragglers, make sure they cannot return and reform in the group around Skarbrand. And this is where the synergy for N'Kari really comes into play, because he'll drain them, and as they drain, they lose models. When they're finally completely destroyed, that's when the burst healing kicks in, and N'Kari can get a lot of health back that way. So you won't quite be able to finish them off, but these Chaos Spawn are rampaged, and that's another one that you really want to make sure you get off the field while you can. And the Khorne realizes it too. They're hustling over here because they want that max. They don't want to lose out on having Chaos Spawn in the late game. Having 1 or 2 models remaining, unbreakable monstrous infantry in the grind, could be enough to prevent N'Kari from running away, from cycle charging, from disengaging, allow, you know, Skarbrand to land a huge attack on him and maybe seal the deal. So Windstealer Sword was popped, but N'Kari will have to waste it because he did not want to be stuck in a fight there. And Skarbrand did bring Slaughter and Carnage, so his weapon strength base right now is about 1.1k. Some of these greater demons hit so goddamn hard, man, it's insane. Exalted Seeker, making sure that these Chaos Warriors do not return to the fold, and their mobility isn't wasted, of course, because it has perfect vigor, so you don't have to worry about chasing around units off. You'll never get it tired. So it's always fighting at peak efficiency until it starts taking wounds anyway. But here come the Fiends, and here comes N'Kari. There is a flank exposed on this side. Chaos Spawn and Skarbrand hustling in, but they don't want to overextend either. They realize the threat that N'Kari, the Bane of Ulthuan, poses. Chariot putting a little bit of pressure on the flanks and rear. Standing still for a little bit too long. Better run. Skarbrand hits pretty damn hard. Cultist starting to duel N'Kari, and yeah, that's not a fight he wants to take. And this is where it just comes down to pure micro. There isn't a ton to micro on either side, but what is there is extremely important for both sides. Locus of Wrath popped from the Herald of Khorne, plus 40 melee attack. Perfect time for N'Kari and the Fiends of Slaanesh to disengage. Another breath from Skarbrand, again not dealing a whole lot better against infantry, but there's no infantry to shoot at right now, so you might as well get whatever value you can. Chaos Spawn with only 120 HP remaining, but still providing the mass and the unbreakable to prevent these mobile troops from moving around. And Skarbrand looking for the duel, the epic late game duel. Rage Embodied has hit the field. Wrathful Reaper, 1.4k weapon strength, now down to 1.2k. 46 and 5. His melee defense is trash because of Acquiescence and Willing Prey, and N'Kari is taking it to him. Whoever loses this duel, it could swing the balance of power in the other faction's favor. Skarbrand the Exiled one down to 135 HP, and Skarbrand crumbles out N'Kari. Wins the late game fight. Will that be enough to skyrocket his faction into the ascendancy? Skarbrand disappearing in what is an amazingly cool animation, and he's stomping forward. And the bigger thing here is that N'Kari just got a bunch of health back from Harvester of Souls. That's huge. Any little sliver of health you can receive in a late game scenario like this one could be enough to swing it, because we are still on a knife's edge. And with the Fiends of Slaanesh charging in with their soporific musk, -5 melee attack, -5 melee defense to anything they touch, N'Kari, he was about to start crumbling, but look at that health bar go up on the left. It was around 1100, it's now up to 1600 and still climbing. And more importantly, the Mortis Drain effect is starting to kick in for everything nearby. The Herald is doing what he can to stabilize leadership, but the cycle charging from Slaanesh is having some seriously detrimental effects on the Blood Host. And though they have stabilized for now, there's a little bit of wavering, and the more units start breaking off from the box, the easier it is for Slaanesh to prey on them. And N'Kari might be able to carry this one single-handedly, but he still has Fiends of Slaanesh in support as well. They're dueling against the Cultist of Khorne. They have high AP and high weapon strength. He realizes he's in massive peril, and the Perfect Vigor Chariot in the late game, just what the doctor ordered when you want to run down infantry. So this is swinging heavily in the favor of the Dark Prince, and what was looking absolutely terrible for them after those initial engagements with an entire army disappearing under the weight of the Khorne assault, well, the pendulum has started swinging back the other way. The shoe is on the other foot, and barring some kind of miracle for Duck and Zach B. Sane, the Khorne army might not have enough gas to take down the Keeper of Secrets and these fiends that have just been so beastly all game long. And look what they're doing here. They're going after the mask too. They're going after the chaos spawn because they realize those are the only things that can possibly pin down the Keeper of Secrets and give Khorne the win. Cultist and Herald will do what they can, and they hit pretty hard, but not hard enough. Balance bar continues to swing in the favor of Slaanesh, and soon this is going to be army losses and more regen as N'Kari sucks his victims dry, gives him the bad touch. And he was at 1100 health. He's now at 2100. So much healing in the late game scenario. That's essentially equivalent to a regrowth. And that prevented him from crumbling and essentially gave Slaanesh the win. Yeah, big flanking charge into the Herald. And that is army losses. Crumble City for Khorne. And what a crazy comeback it was, because that was unquestionably in Khorne's favor for a while there. Really where the battle turned was that slicing shards. That completely changed the complexion of this battle. Subtle torture, pain, and pleasure. N'Kari the Exalted putting the team on his back. Things were looking bleak there for a while, but with a Phantasmagoria, which, to be fair, didn't really set up everything, but it did kind of contribute to the blob, which certainly helped. But the slicing shards was really the game changer. Got him 1,000 damage value by itself, about 80 to 90 kills. Look at his damage value, 6,200. 6,200 on a legendary lord. Warhammer 3 lords are bananas. They are banana insane. Crazy. I mean, he was seriously an amazing pick this game. He did so much work for me, and he was MVP. I mean, he carried it. The Fiends were great. The mobility was decent. The Soul Grinder was okay. Got some good damage against the Bloodthirster. But ultimately, nothing on this battlefield compared to N'Kari. Exalted Keeper got 2,700 damage value with some nice pendulums. Heartseekers weren't useless by any stretch of the imagination. I think the fight that Achilles took was a little bit too head-on with Khorne, but I'm not sure I supported him quite as well as I could have. I just wanted the glory for myself, you know, that's how I play. But the Fleshhounds, yeah, I mean, Duck's army was really well suited for countering a Slaanesh army, but Skarbrand, 4,500 damage value himself. I mean, those kind of values are very rare to see in Warhammer 2. It's interesting to see how much it kicks in Warhammer 3. But yeah, I mean, some of these lords are truly incredible, and N'Kari was a cut above everybody else. So, super enjoyable Faction War 2v2. Came right down to the wire with some crazy comebacks and plays. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and thank you to Doc, Zach B. Sane, and Achilles for joining me.